Big Talk is a member of Odd Pods Media and the ASAP Network. Hello and good morning and welcome into Big Talk. I am Sam Springer and Dalton Shetler is on vacation yet again. And so I'm joined by our buddy Tony Hollinsworth. Tony, how are we this fine morning?
Doing great. It's Friday, and as much as I give Dalton a lot of smack for taking vacation, I mean, realistically, it's more like I've been on vacation. Yeah. So now we're just tagging out. He gets to go on vacation.
How nice! You can finally join us.
I know. Sam, I mean, I gotta ask: does your back hurt from having to carry a show?
Actually, it does. I'm not gonna lie. That's why I've got a standing desk now, because most of the time my back hurts from carrying everything.
I figured. I'll send you something nice as a thank you for that.
Like a chainsaw?
Well, I mean, either chainsaw or probably something good to drink. Your preference, you pick.
That comes from the movie Multiplicity, if you've ever seen it. I know Dalton hasn't, so at least you have a shot to have at least seen it. It's a Michael Keaton movie where he's cloned.
Okay.
And he makes a clone of himself because he's so busy, so he clones himself. Well, each clone takes a personality of his, like a trait of his. So like the first one's a very masculine one. The second one is kind of the feminine side of him. And then what happens is they find out they need another clone. So the first clone makes a clone of him. Mm-hmm. And so he's kind of a special clone because, they say when you make a copy of a copy, it's not as sharp.
True.
So the original Michael Keaton, the original Doug, is talking to the copy of a copy, number 3, and he tells him some stuff about his wife, and he goes, "You know what? I'm going to buy you something nice." And number 3 looks at him and goes, "A chainsaw?" He says, or a book, but it's going to be nice.
Or a book, or let's kind of temper something.
So a lot happening, Tony. Feels like we've had this conversation before, but that lull between spring games and the start of the football season kind of leaves the door open for some basketball news, and that's what we've kind of got to this week. But not kind of that's what we've got. We've got a lot of news coming out of the basketball world. The first, we talked about it last week, Dalton and I, about Hunter Dickinson. He transfers from the University of Michigan from the Big Ten. Mm-hmm. I'm not going to say I'm disappointed to see him leave the conference, but he's going to Kansas, and I don't know, even with the extra time that I thought I had, it was an interview of some sort. He was on a podcast, and I don't remember. I remember reading the article and don't remember the podcast, but he was asked what was one of those things, or what were kind of some of those things that led him to make the decision to go to Lawrence instead of, like he had done visits to Georgetown, to Maryland. I think he did Kentucky even. Mm-hmm. But he was just straightforward and said, hey, the money is, the bigger paycheck from compared to Michigan was a driving factor in that anybody in any job would do the same with that sort of increase in the pay that they could receive. And I'm kind of curious to see what you take from that, and whether you see this as kind of, is it going to be a trend? Is this going to be more, are the players going to be more open about, well, I could make more money?
I think so. And I think it's one of those, you move away from kind of the traditional way of what we're probably used to with a lot of college sports with the NIL, and especially with the transfer portal being a lot easier too. Guys can move around between different schools, and they don't have to potentially sit a year before they're able to actually play. They're able to come in and start right away. I think we're going to see a lot more of this, especially with schools that are predominantly football powerhouses. So their other sports programs don't get as much attention. You look at Michigan. When you look at Michigan, do you really see a basketball school, or do you see primarily more of a football school? Same with Kansas. Kansas is not historically a great football school. So what do they focus on more? They focus more on basketball. Same with Kentucky. Kentucky focuses a little bit more on basketball than they do on football. So to me, I think it's something that's probably going to be more of a prominent thing that you're going to see these guys go to these other schools to make more money because they're more quote unquote basketball schools, because they're going to have a bigger budget. They're going to have more of an opportunity to make more money than if they stay in some of these conferences where basically you're playing second fiddle to football the entire time.
Yeah, I don't disagree. It's each school, like there are the North Carolina, Duke, they're the basketball, those are going to be the sports that draw the money, the higher NIL deals, and unfortunately when it comes to the University of Michigan, they're football first, and most schools, and probably even including Duke and North Carolina and Kentucky, and maybe even I won't say Kansas, but there are a lot of schools that are basketball schools, but they probably still outdraw with their football, but they're just not predominant with their notoriety. So when it comes to the players, they're not going to make individual money more because they're football players at North Carolina. They're going to make more because they're basketball players at North Carolina. Same thing with Michigan, and Michigan. They've been really good. They've been to, I've seen them win a national title in my lifetime in basketball. They've been to multiple championship games, but they're still known as a football school, football first. And that's not damning anybody that could make money there, playing football or whatever, but the basketball players just aren't going to make as much because they're not as, historically as good as what their football counterparts have been.
Yeah. And for him too, I mean, like you said, with a lot of times it's sponsorships and potentially even taking his game to the next level. To you, what does that kind of say about potentially, and again, this is more of a speculation. I have no actual factual proof behind this. This is just kind of a devil's advocate question, because we talked about this throughout the regular season. You look at what the expectations were for Michigan basketball because of, Juwan Howard returning, Hunter Dickinson there, Howard's two sons being there, and the fact that Michigan was supposed to be touted a little bit higher and potentially do better than what they did in the regular season. Do you think that played a factor into it as well? Because I mean, Kansas has been in the conversation at least, the last few years. They even won a national title, not too long ago. So I mean,
2 years ago.
Yeah. So do you think that could have potentially played a factor? I mean, money obviously is probably the biggest driving force.
Yeah, for sure. But, I mean, he wasn't going to go to Florida State where he could probably pull in a ton of money or whatever. I'm not bagging on Florida State, but that just, for sure. I think the added incentive of going to, I mean, because Dalton and I talked about that it was kind of surprised that maybe he didn't pick Maryland or Georgetown, but the aspect of being in, I mean, if not number one, they're definitely in the top 3 to 5. Kansas, they're probably there without Dickinson, and they just got the best portal player ever to enter the portal, according to accolades. He's the first one to ever have All-America credentials to be in the transfer portal. So I think that's definitely. But one thing that I brought up is I'm surprised there was never a mention that he was going to go into the NBA draft, because he had to declare that by May 1st, but he can wait until the end of May to decide whether he wants to go back to school. So like he could have been in the transfer portal. Now, I don't know if there's maybe a little caveat there that you've got to have a decision on what school you're going to by May 31st. 31st. Yeah, 31st. Yeah. May 31st or what. But we've seen players, and we'll talk about one in the Big Ten even. Players have already decided they're not going. They're coming back to school. So like he could have made that decision so I guess my question to you is, how surprised are you that it's never even been mentioned that he entertained the NBA first?
I'm not surprised, and honestly, I think again it's going to be one of those, we probably see this more with a lot of athletes when you're going from collegiate to professional, because I mean you have to think about it, the level, not the level, the number of people that go from collegiate sports to professional drops drastically. You know, you look at the
Oh, for
NFL,
sure.
what was it, like 10% of college athletes will go into the NFL, like even like less than 10% will even be like a long-term starter in the NFL. And I'm assuming the same could probably be said for the NBA because the rosters are even smaller.
But here's the thing: can you see? And I see the comparison. Let's see if you would agree. Hunter Dickinson almost reminds me of a Kevin Love style player, to where he's a big, he can play down low, but yet he can pull you outside and shoot. So that to me says that he would be more valuable than, let's say, a Zach Edey, who is a center only, and he's kind of a slow center, and we'll get to him too in a little bit. But like his versatility as a big man who can go down, play in the post, but then also bring his player out and shoot a three, kind of reminds me of a Kevin Love style. And, you know, Kevin Love's still in the league. Like he's been there 4 years, and it's because he's got that versatility to where he doesn't have just one dimensional game. I'm not saying he's the best multi-dimensional player, but he's good at all of the dimensions enough to where he can at least be a long-time journeyman in the league. And I guess maybe that's why it surprises me that Dickinson didn't at least test the waters first, then come back.
And it could be honestly too, he's maybe doing this to maybe fine tune and, you know, refine his skills a little bit. And honestly, think about it too. He could be one of those guys that, because, you know, no offense to Michigan basketball, because he's so great there at Michigan and he's able to do it all himself, what is he going to be like on a very star-studded Kansas roster? You know, will he be able to mesh and gel and make that work? Or is it going to be one of those, okay, he's going to have to learn this on top of his game. He's going to have to learn this whole teamwork aspect to be able
He's already got a college work ethic established. Like, you know, how detrimental could it be? Like how not detrimental, that was a poor choice of words. But how ungelled will it be him entering into a system? It's not like he's a freshman coming into the program with no preconceived notion of how college basketball can work or works. So yeah, that question does loom. I don't know that it looms large though, because I think he's such a good player. He is an All-American that, you know, if you could get 5 guys that were All-Americans in the transfer portal, would you be all right with that and no freshmen coming in? Because honestly, if you had a team's worth of All-Americans, you would be the early season favorite to win. That's not guaranteeing anything. We saw what happened this year. But the point being is I don't know. I think Bill Self probably considers himself the jackpot winner because he got the best recruit in all of the land, because you got an All-American right there coming
in. And plus, I also kind of look at it this way. You can go to college as many times as you want. You can only play college sports once in your lifetime. So, I mean, for him, I would also look at it as, hey, this is probably going to be my last true opportunity to go at least compete for a national title. Could I here at Michigan? Maybe, but will I have enough of a supporting cast to help me? Whereas if I go to Kansas, I'm going to have a lot of people there to help take the load off. So that could be another reason to me that he also did it, is just, hey, it's my last shot to at least compete for a title. I want to go to the potential best spot for me that I believe will be able to do that.
Well, we got a couple other players I wanted to mention. I did mention Zach Edey. The report comes out on him. He did get an offer to go to the combine, so he's going to go to the combine. But I shared the prospectus for him. He is a 2nd round projected pick. I can't say I'm surprised, but I'm also kind of disappointed in knowing how much he's improved. Let's think about this. He's in his 5th year of playing basketball, period. Not his 5th year of college, his 5th year ever of his whole entire life of playing basketball. And he was the National Player of the Year last year, rightfully so. rightfully so. I'll argue it until I'm blue in the face, or old gold and black, whatever you want to call it. But my point being is he's, what trajectory can you see him developing, down the road? So my question, I guess, is, do you think this solidifies he's coming back, or do you think he's going to go Kofi Coburn to where Coburn was projected second round, like the Edey was this year, and he still went?
Yeah. If it was me, and if I could be a bug in Zach Edey's ear, I would say come back, because like you said, he is predominantly a center. That's what he focuses on. That's what he specializes on. And like you said, all credit to him. He was, player of the year because of what he was able to do great. If it was me, you're projected to be a second rounder, which isn't bad, but also
it's not good either.
Right. But give teams, give them an opportunity, show them that, hey, I'm going to take the opportunity to learn to perfect or at least hone other skills besides being a center. I know I can be great at being a center, but I need to be able to see what that looks like on the outside. Does he have to be the guy forcing the ball, shooting threes? No. But do something different outside of that. Be a great defensive player. Make steals other than just guys missing the rebound. You have to barely reach your arm up, and you can just palm the basketball because you're freakishly large. Show teams that there is something to truly work with. You don't have to be perfect at it. You can be pure raw talent, but teams are more willing to take a chance on raw talent, knowing that they can fall back on you at least being good at being a center. And then they can potentially work on molding and developing you in other areas.
Well, the one thing he's got drawn against him, if he does come back, is, I've seen many, many, many people say he needs to come back and develop a longer range jumper. Heck, even come out and start shooting threes. Okay, two things. Two things. One, you don't want to take away from what you've already worked so hard to develop. Sure. You've become the best center or you're the best player at the center position. Mm-hmm. You're not perfect still in that position. So you need to get better. You need to get better there. But also, yes, I totally agree. He could use a 12 to 15 foot jumper to where you can draw that bigger player out. Mm-hmm. Thing is he's not going to drive by anybody. He just doesn't have the quickness to get a quick first step and go around. But the second thing is Matt Painter doesn't have a system, and this is maybe where Matt Painter needs to change it around a little bit, to where his system doesn't develop a center into a versatile center. Yeah. If he's already a versatile center, like an AJ Hammonds back in the day or Juwan Johnson, then he lets it happen. But it's a set offense to where, we're working with what we have. We're not working on expanding necessarily. That's what you do in the gym. Yeah. And so I get that he could do that in the gym, but just as much as I do, while you can develop things in the gym, they don't get really, really much better until they're in gameplay. Yep. Because you've got varying defenses, varying players, the player guarding you varies. So those are a few things that kind of work against him going into coming back. Yeah. And another thing is you've got William Berg, who's ready to start playing at Purdue. He's 7'2". He's not nearly as thick weight wise, but he can shoot the long range three already. So I don't know that it would be necessarily something that you could expect to come from Zach Edey if he comes back, is the development of a longer range game. Maybe perfect it and maybe expand it out to 10 feet is probably the best you're going to get from a Zach Edey at Purdue next year. Yeah.
I would say the other thing too for him, and it's going to sound crazy because, I know you being a Purdue fan, you know him really well. He's 7'4" and he's 305 pounds, which sounds like a lot. But when you look at somebody of that size and that frame, he's small. Like that to me would be the other thing I'd be worried about with him going into the NBA is, yes, he's big and he can reach, the guy's knocking him down because he's.
It's
going to sound weird. He's not a big guy, but he's a big guy. I have
no doubt that he goes into the NBA. He's going to put on some more weight, some more muscle weight. I'm not delusional to think that wouldn't happen, but you're absolutely right. For and to think Chet Holmgren went in as a 7-footer, weighing like $180 soaking wet. I know that's a little, that's exaggerated, but to think that, but he had versatility. Kind of like William Berg at Purdue, or coming into Purdue, is he's got the versatility. You can't teach versatility, to where you can, that quick first step, that quick dribble, that whatever, that ball handling. If there's a major thing wrong with Zach Edey, it's his ball handling skills. He doesn't dribble. If you see him dribble, he's either at the free throw line or he's taking one where he's getting both hands on the ball after one dribble. That's his dribble extent. So, I honestly would have said at the press conference after the FDU loss is he was coming back. He looked like he had that fire, but honestly, you never make a decision angry, So he was, he's made the decision to enter the draft. He's gotten the combine offer or invite. He may shock people to where they're like, oh, okay, maybe a team takes a flyer late first round, which is still not a great pick because, let's not be delusional. The first 15 picks of the NBA draft are the only ones that are like, yeah, those are rock solid. Then after that, it kind of gets iffy. Yeah. That's not to say you can't get a good player in those picks or even in the second round, but they're just not as guaranteed.
Yeah, it's less likely.
Yeah. So I honestly think he comes back, but I'm not as 100% sure as I was 2 months ago. Not at all.
Yeah. I think that's the other bad part too, like you said, with kids having to, having so much time to make the decision. And like you said, you never make a decision when you're angry. And plus for them too, he has to be sitting there looking at it. Okay, do I come back? We were one of the best teams of the regular season. We were one of the, probably one of the most picked teams to go pretty far in the playoffs, only to end up unfortunately falling short because that's just the game of basketball. But at the same time, I would say for him, you could go back and you would still be fine because there's only a handful of players like we talked about with that even go to the pros. There's an even smaller handful of players that they could still go to the pros pretty much no matter what, and they're still going to be okay. Like he will still end up in the NBA if he wants to go.
Well, let's look at it this way. He's only gonna get better at the center position down in the low post. So even if he spends one more year just working on his low post, he's going to have another year of just being a dominant center in the low post that you would think would have to raise his draft stock at least some, even if it's the tail end to where the NBA champions take him as their first round pick, and it's they don't need anything, but they'll take a 7'4" dude and see if it pans out. It's worth the shot. So the other player that I wanted to mention before we click to the second quarter, which surprise, we're going heavy in the first, Buie, Northwestern guard, has decided to pull his name out of the NBA draft consideration and return to Northwestern for yet one more year. He'll be a super senior because he's using his COVID eligibility that he gained from that season. But to me, this makes Northwestern more of a threat because I think Buie and we talked to Mike DeCourcy, Dalton and I talked to Mike DeCourcy in February, I think. And he said that he's been covering college basketball since 1986. And Buie has shown the most improvement year to year that he's ever seen from any basketball player he's ever covered. Yeah. And for that statement to be made by somebody like Mike DeCourcy, who knows a lot of stuff, he knows his game. He knows his stuff. For him to come back, to me, that makes Northwestern not necessarily top 3. I still think it's depending if Edey comes back or not. Purdue, Michigan State, and Ohio State, Maryland. But I think you put Northwestern right up there in that top 5 now.
Oh yeah, they'll at least be a pain for the rest of the Big Ten, because I mean, you look at last year, they had probably one of their best years that they've ever had, like ever in the history of their basketball years. So yeah, for him coming back, it gives Northwestern, it gives them the experience, and I think that's something that for a lot of teams, that's what's hard to get, is not only getting a star player like that, but getting somebody that is experienced, somebody that is not only experienced, but experienced in being successful. Because you get the run that they had last year. Now in the Big Ten, we were like, can't guarantee that Northwestern win now, can you? You gotta think about that one. You gotta earn that one a little more. So it helps build a more positive culture for Northwestern and build something, positive for the future when you have a great all-star like that knows how to win, that can help build a winning culture and move forward. So that's a huge win for Northwestern.
Yeah, I think Chris Collins is probably going, yay.
Oh, he is. He is.
We might make the tournament back-to-back seasons now. Like that's how good he is. And for some of the games that he had, that absolutely, the Penn State game that they needed to have because they'd gone on a little bit of a slide. They'd slid into that quagmire of 9 teams between 2nd and 10th. They'd slid into the middle of that. They needed to win some games. He scored 23 in the first half against Penn State. Like it just, that is the type of leadership they needed. And they ended up winning that game in overtime. They ended up eventually becoming the number 2 seed in the Big Ten tournament. Now, mind you, they lost in their first game, but that most high seeds did. Yeah. Purdue was the only one that moved out and actually ended up winning the tournament. But like, none of the higher seeds won. I mean, other than IU did too, but then Penn State beat them. But my point being is up until that first round, or that round where all the super buys were, I think all but one were lower seeded teams that won. And then you had Penn State that still went into the final, so it was a crazy. So Northwestern losing in the first round of the Big Ten tournament, I don't care. Yeah. But like they've had good seasons, but I'm going to harken back to Mike DeCourcy. They're built to do it every 4 years, to where their whole recruiting class comes through. And in that 4th year of that really strong recruiting class is when they're geared to compete. Yeah. This might be the exception to the rule, because I think they're going to compete for another tournament bid next season.
Yeah, I think so. And you could even honestly make the argument that they'll have an even more benefit, because you look at Iowa. Iowa's probably going to take a step back because of Louis, losing Murray. Wisconsin was honestly, they fell kind of flat on their face this past season. We expected them to do a lot better. Yeah. Michigan obviously lost Hunter Dickinson. That's big for them to have lost.
And Howard.
So I mean,
but they did get Caleb Love.
Yeah. So, I mean, the potential is there for them to at least be able to continue to be more competitive and take advantage of teams that, at least, again, on the outside looking in, not knowing what their freshmen are going to do, not knowing what any potential incoming and outgoing players are going to do to the teams, they have that advantage of already having a lot of that chemistry there and, kind of vying off of, last year's success. So the potential for them is there to, again, be competitive and be pretty well up there in the Big Ten.
Yeah, it's going to be exciting. So let's move to the second quarter. We're extremely heavy in this first, but this one's going to be a quick segment, because then after halftime, it will kind of tie into what we want to talk about in the third. So let's click over. All right, let's kick off the second quarter. News came last week. I think it might've been even earlier this week that, a couple of a recruit, one of the highly touted recruits of the freshman class this next basketball season, has committed to his school of choice. Bronny James, the son of LeBron James, has committed to Southern California. He's going to take his talents to SoCal. He lives in SoCal. But he's going to go to USC. He's a Trojan. we kind of texted a little bit about, hey, we wanted to talk about Bronny going to USC, and you wanted to bring up and kind of talk about what he'll do with the Big Ten. Honestly, I don't know that he's going to be around to see the Big Ten. I personally don't know that he's going to be around to see the Big Ten. 2 reasons. You have to go to school for at least 1 season.
Yep.
Then his dad's also going to be 40 years old by the time he's a rookie if he leaves after his first freshman year. And they've both made it apparent that they want to play on the same team for at least 1 year.
Yep. Yeah. Now there is one thing that I could see that maybe changes it, and maybe LeBron plays 1 more year. He's 41. I don't know if you know this or not. I found this out just a little bit ago.
Does his contract run out?
Well, no. Guess how much Bronny is going to make just on potential through NIL?
Guess like $8 million. 7.8.
6.1.
Okay, sorry. I must have seen a different.
But you got to think $6.1 million as basically a collegiate athlete. He's in USC. Obviously, that's where
he hasn't even dribbled a basketball on a college floor yet, and he's going to make $6.1 million.
And think about it. It could only go up from there.
Oh, for sure.
So, I mean, don't get me wrong. He could go play with his dad, but is he going to make that type of money?
I think, here's the thing, and I'm not saying that he's a spoiled kid, but I think he knows what having money is. I don't think he has to want for anything.
Right.
I'm not saying right, wrong, indifferent. I don't care.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know that the money necessarily makes that much. I think the ability to be the first father-son grouping to play together on a court at the same time in an actual NBA game that matters, I think probably means more to him than how much money he can make on his own. Because let's think about this. If he's making that much as a collegiate, he's gonna get a shoe deal. He's gonna get this. He's gonna get this as a pro. So I don't know that I see what you're saying, but I don't know that that's going to play anything into his choice of whether or not he stays in college for 1 more year. Plus, they are changing conferences. How different is that going to be traveling to Maryland on a Tuesday night, whereas going to Corvallis on a Tuesday night? There's a big difference. You don't even change time zones going to Corvallis. Think about the NBA or the NFL.
Yeah.
There's always that west going east, always that lag. You might run into that more often than you think unless they schedule it out to where they go on a 4-game road trip where USC goes to Nebraska. Then they go to Columbus. Then they go to the west or East Coast. So they kind of work their way into back to keep from that jet lag, I guess to say.
Now, here's the other thing though that makes me worried, and I get worried about this for any child of any professional or collegiate athlete. The expectations and the standards that you're coming in with because of what your parents built. That's what would make me worry. Because like you said, I think more than likely that's what's going to be the biggest driving factor is they want to play together as father and son. For Bronny, are you ever going to truly have the true transition, the true growth period of being able to be criticized, of playing a collegiate, top of your game, going up against bigger athletes? Because let's be honest, your dad was something totally different that a lot of people had not seen and did not happen very often, of somebody going basically straight from high school to the league and being able to be successful. You're the son, which makes it twice as hard on you because, your dad has won 4 rings, has been to 11 finals, has done all of this. If you don't come close to measuring to some of those stats almost consistently all the time, you're going to receive a lot of criticism. You're going to be looked down upon. And it's nothing against you. It's because of what your dad has done. And because you're, the apple from that tree, you're expected to produce the same thing. So that's the only thing I'm worried about for him, is because like you said, I could easily see him doing just maybe 1 year and then going. but I worry about what it will do for his game in the future because
Well,
Dad's not always going to be there.
I know it's not apples to apples, but can you do me a favor and look up Michael Jordan's son's NBA stats?
I know they weren't good off the top of my head.
They weren't existent because
Yeah.
I don't believe he went to the NBA. If he did, he was a bench player.
Yeah.
But like, you know, there's no guarantee that I know Bronny is a higher rated college or, you know, or a high school recruit than what Michael Jordan's son was. But I just think there's no guarantee that Bronny is going to be a surefire, you know, lottery pick or even a first round pick. Because you know what? He hasn't even stepped a foot on a college court. Right. So yeah, he was dominant in high school. Well, you know what? Every college player almost is a dominant high school player.
Yep.
And not every one of them pans out well. Nope. And there are a lot of players that develop that they're okay, they're pretty dominant, but then they learn how to play in college and they become dominant.
Yeah.
And then they move to the NBA. I don't know. I guess this is way too early to assume that he's going to go pro. I just think if he's anywhere close to what he's projected to be college-wise, I think he would forego it and go for that. Because let's think about it. You know, whatever team would draft Bronny is, yes, I know you're going to deal with the signing or, you know, wherever, whatever, of getting LeBron James. But think about the amount of money that will bring in. And honestly, this is a business. So don't give me well, they should be worrying about winning basketball games. You're right. But you know what? It is also a business where these owners know what sells. They know how to make money. They're not dumb. They didn't just walk in and, all of a sudden a boatload of money fell on them. They had to be smart enough to be able to earn that money to buy a basketball team. So they're not gonna look at the potential and see hundreds, if not billions of dollars on the table and go, no, he's just not good enough.
Or you say it as, even though I've never heard anybody say this, I've always kind of said this to myself. There's two things that can remedy losing: winning and getting paid a lot of money for it.
Yep, it just depends where your priorities are. And I know there are plenty of owners that their priority is not necessarily winning is nice, but it's not the priority. They would much rather line their pockets and be perfectly fine with getting rich over it. So another side note before we go to the half, another commit to USC via the transfer portal, Dennis Rodman's son, DJ Rodman, also transferring to USC to go play with Bronny. Yeah. USC could be pretty darn good this coming season. I tell you what, they weren't horrible. I saw them play against Michigan State and Columbus. They weren't horrible. They've got a good coach. They've got good players already in place. You add those two, USC could be a force to be reckoned with, even if just in the Pac-12.
Oh yeah, like I say, and it does kind of give them a little bit of an advantage because DJ comes from Washington State, where you know he's played for the last 3 years. He was a starter, so I mean they not only get big star power and name there, but I mean think of kind of who better to kind of help take Bronny under his wing, even if it's only for a year of collegiate game.
Played in the conference, knows the conference, knows the game,
and plus think of, I mean, I know Dennis Rodman isn't as big of a star as LeBron, but I mean, who else better to relate? Like, hey, I'm also the son of a famous NBA player,
dude. It's amazing that man was the rebounder he was, and that just tells you what kind of work ethic he had once he hit the court. The stories of him during practice or lack thereof, the stories of him being at practice because he didn't go often. The fact that he was still able to be one of the most dominant rebounders the game has ever seen blows my mind. And for that, you know, DJ's got to be able to bring at least some working knowledge, like you said, at least the knowledge of how to handle things and how to handle certain pressures that Bronny hasn't seen and does not have an idea, because your dad can only tell you about them. You can't be in the middle of them and have somebody that has, a working knowledge from his dad. Like, hey, he's this, I can help you. I've been through these as a player, and I've also been able to talk to my dad about it, and LeBron never went through college. He went straight from high school to the pros. So he doesn't have, and I don't care what you say, there are different environments in college that you have never seen, and you don't see them once you go to the NBA.
Yep. And honestly, that's with any sport. And like you said, too, there's some things that you can't teach, you can't coach.
Mm-hmm.
And like you said, as a parent, even if you're just as a mentor, it's hard to teach something when the best way for you to learn is when you have to experience it on your own and actually deal with it, face to face or physically in front of you.
Well, and DJ is going to be in the fire with him.
Yes.
Trying to talk him through it. So that there's a little bit more assistance that Rodman can give James there for that. So well, let's move to the half. It's minute 13, but on the other side we're going to talk some conference stuff. So be right back. You are listening to Big Talk, hosted on Spotify for podcasters and StreamYard.
Hey, this is Russ.
This is Kyle.
This is Michelle.
From the Infectious Groove Podcast. Join us every Monday for the most fun you can have with a music podcast. The Infectious Groove Podcast uses a positive and fun approach as we take time every week to share our jammy jams, then dig into a thought-provoking topic discussing all decades and genres of music. You can find the Infectious Groove Podcast on all major podcast platforms, or you can head to infectiousgroovepodcast.com to find us there and subscribe. We might have a controversial opinion here or there, but we always have fun with it.
Oh, I'm sure I'll say something dumb.
Subscribe to the Infectious Groove Podcast, part of the Odd Pods Media Network.
This is Beer in Front. Every week I'll talk about a beer that maybe we've forgotten along the way while we get those check-ins and badges. Being the Chicago beer guy, I'll also talk about great craft beer in the city of Chicago. And remember, sometimes the beer in front of you is the best one yet. That's Beer in Front, part of the Odd Pods Media Network.
All right, we're back from the half, and little conference information that we've wanted to talk about. We're just got done talking about USC and their recruits that are coming in, and whether or not Bronny James even sees the Big Ten, because after next season, USC and UCLA move to the Big Ten. Kind of a big move, wouldn't you say? Kind of the pillars of the Pac-12 moving to the Big Ten, kind of out of nowhere, almost crippling, almost. But excuse me, goodness, sorry. But little video clip that you shared with me from 365 Sports. It was Brett McMurphy talking on the line about the Big Ten doesn't want to kill the Pac-12. The Big 12 is going to have to act first. And what they're talking about is the reports after the Big Ten took UCLA and USC was that they would be going after Oregon and Washington as well right after that. But what kind of this was talking about was Brett McMurphy had talked to some people that he trusts and believes that they're not just feeding him a line, is the Big Ten doesn't want to be responsible for the Pac-12 folding because they took their big guns. I already posit they've done that. I mean, honestly, no matter who the Pac-12 replaces UCLA and USC with, it's not going to be the same Pac-12. But what this report was, or they were talking about, was the Big Ten's waiting for the Pac-12 to go after, I believe it is Arizona and Colorado, and yank them to the Big 12, much decimating even more the Big 12 or the Pac-12, to where it makes it okay for the Big Ten to go in and finish them off, basically, so they're not responsible for killing off, because the Colorado Arizona move was more detrimental to the conference rather than the USC UCLA move. What do you think on this one there, Tony?
Like, what the Big Ten needs to do? The Big Ten needs to play some of the old Mortal Kombat games where finish it. Like that's like you said, they already, it's kind of like you take a water balloon, you take a little teeny tiny pin and you poke it, and you just got this little pea stream of water just slowly coming out of the balloon. That's what the Big Ten did when they
I think they
USC
took
and
about
UCLA.
6 pins on each side and just poked it with that USC move. That's not a minor move, Tony. I mean, that's not at all a minor move. And for the Big Ten, what's the difference too? Why?
Oh, yeah.
What does it matter?
Right.
You've already taken the biggest pieces, so why not take the other
the next biggest pieces? Yeah.
And because what's the big deal? You've already done irrevocable damage to that conference with your original move. You're still going to be responsible for the Pac-12 folding down. It's not going to be Colorado and Arizona leaving. It's not going to be. It's just not.
Well, and there's two things that go with that too. The first thing that Brett McMurphy actually mentioned on that as well. The Big Ten has already vetted and approved Oregon and Washington to come to the Big Ten.
They just have to extend the offer.
The words were not yet. We're ready for you, but not yet. The other thing that kind of blows my mind, and I don't know if you saw or heard this, it's also the TV networks that don't want to be the ones to do this. Like ESPN doesn't want to be the one that has the blood on their hands because they basically gave the Pac-12 an offer that they didn't care for, so the schools leave to go find another deal, and they end up getting more money that way. And same with Fox Sports.
It's done, though.
Right. And that's what kind of blows my mind. And you're also, and me, I'm sitting here listening to this and I'm looking at some of the number evaluations that they're potentially thinking about giving with ESPN and potentially Apple, which, like he said, there's conflicting reports on whether or not Apple is or isn't still involved. At max, the schools are only going to get about $19 million out of a potential new media rights deal for however long this is. That's not much at all. Not especially when, again, like you said, the Big Ten plucks them and they're still right there in Pac-12 country. You know, Oregon, Washington, Stanford, Cal, all of them are looking like, wait a minute, they got some pretty sweet money right there. You look at the Big 12, each of the Big 12 teams are earning what, 30, almost $45 million a year as well. So
so I did quick math, right? Mm-hmm. You said the current deal plus maybe Apple TV is going to be like $19.5 million.
Mm-hmm.
62.5 million is what each team from the Big Ten is going to get from the media deal each year at the 16 teams it'll be next year. If it gets bigger, Kevin Warren did something very, very smart. He built in the expansion clause. So if more teams get added, more money gets added to that deal. So even if it doesn't match to where, okay, every team added in gets $62.5 million, they're going to make upwards of 50 at least, I'm sure.
You got to think, like Northwestern, for example, we'll say is like the bottom of the Big Ten. They're making almost 4 times the amount of money a top Pac-12 school would be making.
Yeah.
4 times.
Yeah. And why would the Big Ten worry about being the one that was responsible for it? And why would any team want to go elsewhere other than the Big Ten right now? Because they have the premier media deal. Mm-hmm. That's why I'm saying, don't, you know what? You already are the villain. You've already decimated a conference. Go all in, be the villain, put on the black coat and just laugh your way to the bank because you're bringing in the likes of Arizona. You're bringing in the likes of, Oklahoma. You're bringing, or not Oklahoma, Oregon. You're bringing in the likes of a Washington. Now, don't get me wrong. Washington's kind of the one on the cusp that I'm not necessarily sold on. I still think you invade the Big 12 and you get Baylor, but that's just me. I guess I'm dumb. But my point is you're basically printing money with your media deal.
Mm-hmm. Now here's the other thing.
Bad guy, just do it.
And here's the other thing that kind of surprises me as to why the Big Ten doesn't just go ahead and pull the trigger. If you get Oregon, you get Washington, you know who else they're probably going to go ahead and grab from the former Pac-12? Stanford. And you know who's probably going to immediately want to come just because they'd have to face Stanford, they'd get to face Cal, they'd get to face Washington, and they'd potentially have to face Big Ten teams. Oh yeah, the big fish that's still left, Notre Dame.
I was just getting ready to say, and let's not forget, Notre Dame's still out there. And I'm sorry, but $62.5 million might be enough on top of whatever deal they've got. If the if the Big Ten was smart, and I know we've talked about this before, is they could easily work it into where, okay, for the rest of this media deal, of your media deal, you keep it all. Mm-hmm. You maybe get a reduced rate a little bit to where you're still making more than what other Big Ten teams are, but you're not making an equal share of that same media deal. You have your other one.
Yep.
Then after that, you go up to a full share of the media deal, and we're all happy. And you're in our conference. And you get to play USC as a conference game. You get to play Michigan as a conference game. Mm-hmm. You get to play Ohio State as a conference game. Oh, and by the way, go out to Pasadena and play UCLA at the Rose Bowl.
Mm-hmm. Go play Stanford.
Go play Stanford, another rival, as a conference game.
Yep.
Except embrace the role and be the bad guy. Put a dagger in them and just let them bleed out the rest of the way. Take who you want. You want the Big 12 to have Colorado? Go ahead, take them. We don't need them. Primetime ain't drawing that much.
No. And plus, I mean, honestly, like we said, we've talked about, and I still think it's going to be the case. When the Pac-12 dies, it's going to be the Power Four. And then obviously, as we've heard rumblings, and I think it's a matter of when some of these schools will potentially break their media rights deal with the ACC. But it's going to be three big conferences. I think it's going to be the Big Ten, the SEC, and the Big 12. Because the Big 12 to me is getting momentum, and really,
I am still shocked that the Big 12 is sticking around. I really am, and I mean, because look, they're losing their two biggest fish to the SEC, and they're still considered one of the best or the strongest of the four remaining real Power 5 conferences.
And I
don't get it.
You want to know what I think part of it is? Part of it is, I think, because of Baylor having success in football here recently and basketball of recently, you look at the run that TCU went on, the fact that they are losing their two big fish, but then really out of the Power 5 schools the Group 5 schools that were left, they really got kind of the top tier that you could argue, okay, these guys could potentially make it into a Power 5 conference. And think about this too.
Don't care.
Really, you look at someone like Oregon State, you look at Washington State, you look at Arizona State, Colorado. Really, the only other place they fit, not even just geographically, but their style and their level of competitiveness in any type of sports is the Big 12. The SEC's not going to take them. Now, the Big 10 might, but the SEC's not going to take them. The ACC maybe might try to do a coast-to-coast thing, but I don't see that happening as likely.
The Pac-12 is replacing one needle mover, definite needle mover, and one historic needle mover with potentially San Diego State and someone else.
Yep.
They ain't moving the needle.
Nope.
So the Big 12 is replacing two huge needle movers in Oklahoma and Texas with Cincinnati, UCF, Houston, and BYU. Those are not needle movers. I don't understand how you say, oh yeah, they're gearing them. I'm not you. I've heard others say, oh, they're gearing up to be the third of the top three conferences. How? Who's your two best teams historically in the history of the Big 12 when they've been known as the Big 12? Your three top have all left. Nebraska is now in the Big 10, has been for a while, and Oklahoma and Texas are leaving. And you're telling, I don't get it. I somebody needs to tell me, explain it to me like I'm a 6-year-old, because I don't understand it, and we don't have enough time to try to figure it out right now. It just is. It's baffling. I more to come on that. it's interesting to see, and the driving force on all of this is football.
Oh yeah, 1,000%, and it's only football.
Yeah, basketball doesn't move the needle anywhere near San Diego State football.
No,
like Baylor basketball barely moves the needle compared to San Diego State football.
Yeah.
Now that's not to say that Baylor's not better at basketball than San Diego State is at football. I'm just saying, you've got to consider the sport, and football drives the bus. It really does. So there's more to come on that, but we got some news on the other side of the whistle about Big Talk. Okay, running up on it, Tony. I know we said that, this is the fourth quarter. We're going to go straight into our socials because we've got a little bit of an announcement for the show. So go ahead and take the top half of the socials there.
Yeah. So you can find us on Instagram, Twitter, and I know it's not on there. Sam's going to fix that, but
Yep.
I fixed this just here recently. You can also find us on TikToks again at B1G _talk. Big Talk, but just remember the I is actually a 1, or the 1 is an I. More than likely, the I is a 1.
No, the one's not an I. The I is a 1.
The I is a 1. You can find us there. You can also find us on Facebook at Big Talk, again, B1G Talk, and you can find us on the ASAP network at least twice a week.
That one right now, it's just weekly through July.
True.
If
Weekly.
you read the overlay.
Joke's
Tony.
on you, sir. You think I can read. And if you...
It's not, they're different colors, so should be able to read it.
Colorblind, sir.
I know. They're different colors, though. I'm saying the background is white. The other is colored, so...
True.
Go ahead.
You can also find us on the All Sports All Plays network, and through that you can actually find us on the App Store there on Google Play and Apple, whichever phone service you provide.
Android.
Sam, I will let you finish it off with the big news.
Yeah, we for the duration of Big Talk and prior to that Big 10+4, we were part of the Odd Pods Media Network. After today, our next show that we air, we will now be part of the Lounge Media Group. Along with ASAP. It's a move that it's a company that actually I'm starting. So we're moving the Big Talk show and name under that network and that media group. Excited for what the future can hold, but we loved our time at Odd Pods. I still love each and every one of those people over there with Odd Pods. We are proud to have been a part of Odd Pods. Like I said, I still love all the guys and gals that are over there. But now we will be under the Lounge Media Group network tag along with ASAP. So it's an exciting move. I don't know if I'm thinking right or not. Some people probably say I'm crazy, but that's okay. That's
right.
okay. I don't care.
Guess what?
Fine.
It's not their show. They get to enjoy everything else. Just don't worry about all the behind the details stuff. The show isn't going to change.
Yes, like it says, it's a new network, but it's the exact same show. We're going to still continue doing all the college sports with Midwest perspective. We'll continue to do all that, and that brings us to the end of the show. Tony, thanks for filling in for Mr. Dalton, who decided he needed a vacation. And you know what? I'm going to be going on vacation in June. I'm going to be in Canada. I probably will still have a show. I'm just saying.
True dedication.
True dedication. When you carry the show, you got to do what it takes, right?
You let me know. I will in June. I will be in DC for a few days, and then I'm going to Pennsylvania for a Hispanic festival, which kind of surprises me. I was like, I didn't picture that for Pennsylvania. I figured that more Amish country, but hey, we will
tomato.
Out. Right.
All right. That's it from this episode of Big Talk. I'm Sam Sprunger. Appreciate you coming in. That's Tony Hollinsworth. And you know what? We'll see you later.